All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's forum. My name is Edward Bryan, and I'm here on behalf of the Chinese Solidarity Committee. We are a group promoting collaboration and understanding between Canada and China. Here in the West, there's a lot of disinformation contributing to the rising tension from Canadians towards China. And we host these forums and other events to try to illuminate that we have same interests. We're both interested in peace and prosperity, and there's a lot more that unites Canadian and Chinese um, than that separates us and divides us. Tonight's forum is particularly focused on climate change and climate action, particularly China's actions on climate change. Canada and China have a lot of similar issues when it comes to climate change. We both have electrical grids that are heavily reliant on coal, and we both have large resource extraction economies. Um, and yet, China has become a leader in utilizing renewable energy sources and is set to reverse course on emissions growth in just the next few years. Um, by contrast, Canada is not really on track to meet any of our climate goals. And in this political moment, um, it seems like a lot of our goals and climate change in general has been moving to the back burner, and we are much more focused on increasing resource extraction. Um, so the purpose of this forum is to understand the policy decisions and goals that China has undertaken um, in regards to climate change and just see how China has tackled this issue so we can chart our way to reducing emissions and create a greener future for Canada. Today we have two really great speakers. We have Miss Tamara Lorincz and Dr. Xian. Uh, So we're going to get Dr. Zhang to speak first on China's climate actions and his experiences in China. Um, Dr. Zhang is an associate professor at School of Politics and International Studies. Um, in Central China Normal University. He received his doctorate in international politics from Peking University, and he served as an official at the State Council Information Office in China. He also joined a PhD program at Waseda University of Japan and worked as a PhD researcher at Utrecht University in the Netherlands for years. His research interests include comparative political studies, human rights, and international politics. He is now the director of China's Society for Human Rights Studies and a member of the European Consortium for Political Research. So with that, Dr. Zhang, go ahead.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone in Canada, and now is the morning in China. So it's my great pleasure to be invited by China Solidarity Committee to participate in this meeting. I think it's very meaningful for us, and it's also very good timing for us to discuss this interesting issue. Today, my topic is about environmental protection and sustainable development in the new era of China. As you all know, this year, 2025, marks two 10th anniversaries. One 10th anniversary is the Paris Climate Agreement, which was signed in 2015. The other, it also marks the 10th anniversary of UN SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, also adopted in 2015. So these two anniversaries are very important. So today we discuss environmental protection and also sustainable development in China. It's very meaningful. I think it's a good topic. My presentation consists of three parts. The first, I want to compare China's situation before and now. Second, I will tell you what China has made about its commitment and actions to deal with, to tackle the environmental protection and the sustainable development issue. Third, I would like to tell you what are the experiences we can learn from Chinese actions and what is the prospect in the future. First, I would like to share with all of you my personal experience. You know, 10 years ago, 10 years ago, I worked in Beijing. I studied in Beijing. I got my master degree and my PhD degree at the Beijing University, Beida. And I also worked for nearly 3 years. I got a very good position in Chinese government. But I finally decided, finally decided to leave Beijing because at that time, 10 years ago, it was a very, very serious situation of the air pollution. You can read a lot of newspaper at that time. So it's all about the air pollution, the smog, the hazardous haze. So it's a very serious situation at that time. Many people left Beijing because of the air pollution. So I don't know whether you heard a term. It's a fine particulate matter. It's a PM 2.5. Uh, at that time in Beijing, it's very, very serious. Almost more than, I think, 300, 400, even 500 PM 2.5. It's very dangerous. It's hazardous for people's health. So that's why many people left Beijing. And at that time, a famous documentary go viral, named Under the Dome. Under the Dome. It reflects why this happened, why we had such serious air pollution in China, especially in Beijing. But if you look at now situation, things have changed. Things has changed drastically. I give you three numbers. One is about the blue sky. Blue sky. UN report says China is now ranked the most quickly environmental changing country. It's quickly improve its environmental, especially the air quality. According to statistics, China now has 339 cities. Now, all those cities have a very good situation in air. The numbers of the days of the good air condition almost take up of 19% of days. This is the first number. The second number is about the clean water. Now more than 90% water, no matter it's a lake or river in China, in terms of the section of the water service, more than 90% water service is good quality. This is the second number. The third is about the new energy industry. Now, China new energy industry developed very quickly. Yearly, it produced more than 13 million electric vehicles. Even BYD, BYD is the biggest electric vehicles or the new energy vehicles in China. Itself can produce more than 3 million electric vehicles. All those new energy industry reduce air pollution very much and improve China's economic and society situation very much. That's now situation. So if you compare the situation, air pollution situation in China before, and compare the situation nowadays, you will think, you will find that it's a big change happened. So some people ask me whether you are regretful or not when you left, when you made the decisions left Beijing 10 years ago. I said a little bit, really, a little bit. Because now when you visit Beijing again, you can see the blue sky, the clean water, not only in Beijing, but also in many other cities in China. So you can see this big change. So if we find a good time to discuss why this big change happened, we can find it 10 years ago, also 10 years ago, uh, actually happened in November 2014. That year, APEC, Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Organization, they had a meeting in Beijing. That year, we first time to see it's a blue sky, blue sky. But this blue sky is not natural. It's made by the government's actions. You can see the vehicles in the empty street and the air polluted factory temporarily shut up by the government. So it's actions by the government to create a APEC blue 10 years ago. But now, this is not a man-made sky blue, blue sky. Now it's very natural because of the efforts, because of the actions uh, taken by the Chinese government to protect the environment and to have this sustainable development. This is what my personal story I want to share you. But I think the most important experience for us is that it's a big change, not only in the philosophy, development philosophy, but also it's the commitment Chinese government has made, and the actions it taken. In terms of the philosophy, the traditional development philosophy is very common, especially in the developing countries. The philosophy is that polluting first and cleaning up later means that because you are developing countries, you are poor, you are less developed. So firstly, it's necessary for you to pollute and develop your own economy, your own society, or your own industry. Then you deal with these difficult issues to cleaning up later. So it's very common. But now China has a totally different development philosophy. In Chinese, we call 绿水青山也是金山银山. In English, I translated it's like green mountains and clean waters are also mountains of gold and the waters of silver. That's President Xi emphasized many times. We have a totally different development philosophy, not polluting first and cleaning up later, but emphasize the environment just like you emphasized economic development. That's very, very different paradigm of development philosophy change totally. I give you a concrete example. In Zhejiang province, Lishui city, Zhejiang province is a very, very prosperous and rich province in China. It's near the eastern coast of China, near Shanghai. And Lishui city is the poorest, less developed city in Zhejiang province. But Lishui is a good example to analyze the changing of the development philosophy because Lishui is the first city that not treat the government performance using GDP calculation, GDP development, but using another different framework to judge. It's about how you protect your environment, the mountain, the river, the air, the waters in your city. So from then on, 10 years ago, the officials, especially the local officials, on one hand, they also still very emphasize the economic development in terms of GDP. But on the other hand, compared with before, they now more focused on environmental protection. That's very different compared with before, that the development philosophy, even the judgment system toward the local officials has totally changed. That's a concrete case I want to share with you. Chinese government has made a lot of commitment in terms of environmental protection and sustainable development. Uh, the Chinese government set two goals. One is the carbon peaking in 2030. The other is carbon neutrality in 2060. From then on, you can see there is a net zero emission in around 2050. Around 2050. This is the two goals has been made by the Chinese government. And consequently, there are five major tasks Chinese government want to do. First is creating a green, no carbon, and circular economy. So it's very important. We now want to a green economy compared with before. Maybe it's air polluted, maybe it's not very environmental friendly economy, but now we want a green, carbon low, and circular economy. Second, all the governments need to improve energy efficiency. You should take notice of the cost effect. It should be efficient when you use the energy. Maybe you can use more new energy. The third, increase the share of non-fossil energy consumption. Use much more any other new energy, for example, solar energy, water energy, wind energy, such like that, is less polluted. Fourth, the government should lower the carbon dioxide emissions to satisfy the two goals I just introduced, the carbon peaking in 2030 and the carbon neutrality in 2060. The fifth, the government should boost the carbon sink capacity of ecosystems. All these five major tasks guide all the government's actions at the different levels, from the central government to the local governments, what they need to do. The newest development is happened last month. On September 25th, President Xi delivered a video speech to participate in UN Climate Summit in New York. President Xi newly raised the idea of 2035 goals. It marks a new stage in China's climate policy. It emphasized first, reduce net greenhouse gas emission by 7 to 10% from peak level. Second, increase the share of non-fossil fuels in energy consumption over 30%. Third, expand the installed capacity of wind and solar power to over 6 times compared with the 2020 levels. So this is the newest promise Chinese government has made, and it's guide the future plan of Chinese action. This is what I want to share with all of you. According to Paris Agreement, the Paris Agreement, I think is unprecedentedly tremendous, important achievement made by human beings to dealing with the environmental protection issue and the climate change. The Paris Agreement emphasized two principles very much. One is the NDCs. It encourages the nationally determined contributions by different countries. It means that every different country, no matter you are a developed country or developing country, you should make your own contribution. It's nationally determined contribution. Second, just like other climate or environmental protection agreement, the Paris Agreement also emphasizes very much is the CPDR principles. CPDR means that common but differentiated responsibility. What that means? It means that developing country, less developed country, you have a different responsibility. Although the responsibility is common, it's equal to all the countries around the world, but each country, you should take your own actions to deal with this issue. It's common, but differentiated. It's because of the historic and economic and social factors to influence that. So this, we should take notice of that. Not only China has made a great achievement in environmental protection, China also focused on sustainable development. Maybe environmental protection is crucial part of sustainable development, but sustainable development covers more field and areas. UN has three pillars. One is the peace and security. The other is the sustainable development. The third is the human rights. So sustainable development is not only one of the three pillars of UN, but also is the development goals and the development plan of all human beings. United Nations has a Sustainable Development Summit in 2015, 10 years ago. So it set a sustainable development goals we call SDGs. It asked all the countries till 2030 should realize 17 sustainable development goals. So it's a development agenda, new agenda for the human society. No poverty, for example, no poverty, zero hunger, clean water, sanitation, clean energy, renewed, reduce inequality, and quality education, so on and so forth. So many development goals, sustainable development goals set by the SDGs. It's not only about this generation development, but also it emphasizes the cross generations justice. China follow this SDGs very seriously. So Chinese development not only focus on environmental protection to dealing with the air pollution I just mentioned, but also it emphasizes the comprehensive sustainable development. For example, in 2021, President Xi himself, representing the Chinese government, said, we have already achieved that poverty alleviation. We eliminate the absolute poverty in China. So no absolute poverty. So it's a different criteria, but absolutely poverty in China, no matter in rural areas or in less developed regions, you cannot see absolute poverty anymore. So China successfully to realize this SDGs, no poverty, no absolute poverty anymore. United Nations, European Union praise this very much. As we all know that there is hot debate between different countries. What are human rights? What are human rights? China, just like the European Union, they admit there are two generations human rights. One is the civil and political right. The other is economic and social cultural right. But the United States don't admit that economic, social, cultural right are human rights. United States just emphasize civil and political rights are human rights. So on that background, China has a common language with the European side. European Union admit that China has made a great achievement in poverty alleviation. China eliminates the so-called absolute poverty. So this is one of the biggest achievement China has made in history, I think in human history. Almost 1 billion people, they now are not in the situation of poverty. They can enjoy their lives freely. Okay, this is the first area. Second, China also invests a lot in educational development and also in some new energy industry developments. I just mentioned the electric vehicles, but electric vehicle is not the only successful areas China has made. You can also focus on, you can also take notice of other areas, for example, unmanned drone or optical photo, voltaic, and many other new energy industries. China has made a big progress. This is all because of the Made in China 2025 project. And this year also marks the 10th anniversary of this Made in China 2025 project. I think basically it's successful. So what I want to show you is that China not only has made a big progress in environmental protection, but also, generally speaking, broadly speaking, in the whole sustainable development goals, China has also realized many goals set by the United Nations, SDGs. Why China can make this progress? Why has China succeeded? And what China will achieve in the future, in the coming future? Personally, I'm optimistic. I think many good experience we can conclude from Chinese development. Uh, uh, I think first, because I'm a researcher in political science, I emphasize many political factors. First, China is a centralist system. Centralist system means the central government is very powerful. It's very different from the system of Canada. Canada is a federalist system. China is a centralist system. So because the central government, especially President Xi himself, emphasized environmental protection and sustainable development issue very much. Uh, so this is the huge impetus and the momentum uh, for China's action against the air pollution or deal with the sustainable development issue. Uh, in my personal observation, I think among the previous, compared with the previous leader, President Xi may be the most politicians uh, focus on environmental protection issues. When he visited China's different province, no matter in the rich place or in the poor place, even in the minorities autonomous region in Tibetan Plateau, near Yangtze River, in the mountainous areas, he emphasized very much the environmental protection. You should keep your air clean. You should keep your water clean, and you should emphasize this green mountain and clean water. Also, mountains of gold and the rivers of silver. So he emphasized almost the time when he visited different local areas, because the supreme leader has a very strong political will to cope with the air pollution issue, to cope with the sustainable development, and the central government also implement this political will and has a very top design system building, a capacity building, so China can has a great ambition and to deal with this environmental protection issue. This is the first experience I can conclude a strong political will and the top design of the Chinese government to against air pollution and deal with the sustainable development issue. This is the first experience. Second is that uh, from 10 years from 10 years ago, it's a totally change, I just mentioned. It's a totally change evaluation system toward officials. GDP development or the economic development, yes, it's also very important. But at the same time, uh, air pollution uh, or the sustainable development issues, whether you can deal with it is very good. It's also another even more important judgment system toward the official. So official evaluation system has changed. That's very important in China because China is a government-driven, frankly speaking, it's a government-driven policy in many different areas. Uh, Now the officials, especially the local officials, they don't feel the very big pressures of economic development. Uh, they now focus on even more in this air pollution and the sustainable development issues. This is the second change. The third change is that it's a consultational triangle system between the government, enterprise, and the people. You can see it's a triangle relations. The government uh, made a national climate change strategy or action plan. The enterprise, as one party of the triangle relations, uh, it it has its innovative strategy to develop its own industry. So economically, in the past 10 years, its industry upgrading situations happened. And the people as the third party in this triangle relations, people also need to accommodate uh, uh, this change. And it is environmental friendly and adaptive strategy, adaptive adaptive society of people. So this triangle relation, the three parties, government, enterprise, and people, they closely cooperate with each other. That's why China can achieve this big progress in dealing with air pollution and sustainable development. This is the third reason. The fourth, internationally, these years we witness big transformation unprecedentedly. The Ukraine war and the tension between China and the United States, and the trade war, the tariff war. So many horrible things I can say it happened in the world. So because of the geopolitical change, because of the world political change, China now should take a different uh, approach to deal with many domestic and international issues. China diversify its importing oil from Russia, from Central Asia, even from the Middle East as well. So China diversify its importing oil, and also China higher the level using the gas because gas and any other clean energy used more and more in the daily life of Chinese people. So you can see less and less air pollution and uh, other things in this issue. Also, very important, China is a good example to keep its promise to international community compared with the United States. We know United States has withdrawn from many international agreement or treaty. For example, Paris climate agreement. Trump administration, the first Trump administration withdraw. Now the second Trump administration also withdraw from it. But China is a good case, good example to keep its promise because China promised in the Paris Climate Agreement, because China has promised in the SDGs. So China want to follow its promise. That's the fourth reasons why China can successfully to tackle the air pollution issue and the environmental protection issue, even the sustainable development issue. Talking about future, very briefly speaking, first, I would like to say China will continue to actively participate in global climate governance. As China proposed many other plans, for example, CSFM, Community of Shared Future for Mankind, One Belt, One Road initiative. China now actively to participate in global climate governance, especially under the background, United States withdraw from the Paris climate agreement. Even European Union once was a WizKid, good example to deal with the environmental issue. But now, because of the Ukraine war, the European countries, many European countries, lack of the daily life supplying of gas and the oil, especially the Nord Stream second, the pipeline was bombed by someone. So in Germany, they now reopen the coal energy plant, and they try to reopen the nuclear plant. And the European Union now turn back compared with years ago in terms of the development of electric vehicles or new energy industry, and has some tariff or the section even mechanism against the Chinese related industry. So against all this background, China, on one hand, will more actively participate in the global climate governance. On the other hand, China will focus more on its own development in new energy industry, and will, for example, will drastically expand the forest, etc. Will make new energy vehicles the mainstream in sales of new cars, and it will establish a climate adaptive society. climate adaptive society is very, very important. Frankly speaking, even nowadays, there is a dispute or disagreement of whether we should sacrifice our economic development to serve the goals of sustainable development or deal with the air pollution issue. So we need to achieve a consensus, a broad consensus. We should build a environmental friendly society and a climate adaptive society in the future. So many things still need to be done, but because we have a strong will and the supreme leader, President Xi himself, emphasized consistently in the environmental protection issue, sustainable development issue, and because the government, the enterprise, and the people, the three parties, consensually cooperate with each other. Because China now has a new energy industry upgrading, and because China now face a totally different geopolitical situation. So all because of these factors, I think China will focus on more new energy industry development and focus on more sustainable development issues. So personally, I'm optimistic what China can do in the future. So China has succeeded in environmental protection and sustainable development, and it will continue to do so. That's my very brief conclusion toward these issues. Thank you very much for your time. I'm not sure whether I satisfy your expectation, but I will answer your question if you would like to raise. I just share my personal observation and my personal experience toward this issue. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zhang. That was actually really great. Thank you. As Dr. Zhang noted, if you have questions, please do leave them in the chat, or you can direct message Ian in the chat. And we will have a quick question period after the presentations. But to move this along, next we have Tamara Lorincz. Tamara is going to offer a Canadian perspective, and she is a PhD candidate in global governance at Basile School for International Affairs at Wilfrid Laurier University in Waterloo. Her research is on climate and environmental impacts of the military. Tamara has graduated with a master's in international politics and security studies from the University of Bradford in the United Kingdom. She also has a JD and an MBA specializing in environmental law and management from Dalhousie University. She's a former executive director of the Nova Scotia Environmental Network and a co-founder of the East Coast Environmental Law Association. For several years, Tamara was on the board of directors for Eco Justice of Canada, and she was at the Nova Scotia Ministers' Roundtable on Environment and Sustainable Prosperity. Tamara is currently a member of the Canadian Voice of Women for Peace and the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, and a fellow with the Canadian Foreign Policy Institute. And so without further ado, Tamara, go ahead.
So good evening, everyone. It's really fantastic to be with you all. A big thank you to the Canada-China Solidarity Committee and all of the other groups involved for organizing this meeting. And it was really informative and inspiring to hear from Dr. Zhang. I wish that I was in China with you. I have never been to China. I'm dying to go. And maybe someday in the future we can do a panel together there. But what I'm going to talk about in my presentation is sharing with you some of the experiences that I've had at the climate summits, because I've been to several, and seeing China in action at the climate summits. And as well, in my PhD research, I've been doing the climate impacts of the military and this intersection between geopolitics and global climate governance. And within that research, I have learned a lot about China. So I'm really excited to talk to you about what I've learned about China and how I've seen China at the different UN meetings. And I'm going to show a PowerPoint presentation. So I'm going to get that up right now. And here we go. And you can see that I've got my email there. I'm happy to share my slides with you. So be sure to send me an email if you would like any of my slides or links to any of the resources that I'm presenting tonight. So I would like to begin with a few climate basics and add on a little bit to what Dr. Zhang said. So the foundation of global climate governance is the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change that came into force in 1994. And the three main pillars of that agreement is stabilizing the climate, achieving sustainable development, and this through international cooperation. Every single climate agreement, the Kyoto Protocol, the Paris Agreement, the global stocktake that came out in 2023, all of the decisions that come out from the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Conference of the Parties always has these three key themes. And something that Dr. Zhang also talked about is this idea of the common but differentiated responsibilities. And that is the distinction between the developed and the developing countries. So when the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change was negotiated 30 years ago, there was an expectation that the developed countries, the big, wealthy Western countries that had developed using so much fossil fuels and that were the historic biggest emitters and the biggest culprits for the climate crisis, that they would go first in reducing their emissions. And then they also made the commitment to help developing countries with sustainable development in a green way. And this CBDR was also known as the firewall, and a firewall between the developed and developing countries. So these requirements and obligations on the developed countries, and this represents the principle of equity. So we see this as well in the Paris Agreement. And as Dr. Zhang said, this is the 10-year anniversary. So we've all made an agreement that we are going to keep global mean temperature rise to 1.5 degrees. This is in the upper echelons of the safe zone. We're all going to cut emissions by 50% by 2030 and achieve net zero by 2050. 2 years ago, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change came out with their State of the Climate report, and they said that we need urgent action to secure a livable future because we are currently not on track with our level of emissions to keep global mean temperature rise to 1.5 degrees or lower. In fact, we are on a track of 2 to 3 or more mean temperature rise by the end of this century. And this is catastrophic climate change, really extreme natural disasters that's going to impact everybody on the climate. So it's so important for us to reduce our fossil fuel use. And in that report, the very last paragraph, and they repeat this idea of international cooperation, but they stress that for ambitious climate action, we need international cooperation. At all of these climate summits, there are these different negotiating blocks. So Canada, the United States are part of this JUCAN's negotiating bloc. China is part of the really important developing countries negotiating bloc called the Group of 77 and China. But because there's more developing countries, it's now a network of 145 countries. So when I've been going to the climate summits, I've been paying more attention to this Group of 77 negotiating group, and I'm going to talk about them more in a few minutes. But first, I'm going to talk about some of these statistics from the World Bank, because there's often a misperception in the mainstream media that China is the worst. It's the biggest climate culprit right now. It's the biggest problem. It's what's blocking progress right now. Well, we really need to look at it in context. So According to the latest World Bank statistics, this is for last year, China, with a population of 1.4 billion people, its GDP was $18 trillion, but its GDP per capita is 13,000 US dollars per person. So this is why, you know, it's also very much considered a developing country as well. Its emissions per capita is 9 tons of CO2 equivalent. And if you look at these statistics, you can see how low GDP per capita was, you know, in the past 25 years, and how it's gone up. So 30 years ago, when China and the other countries were negotiating the UNFCCC, China's GDP per capita was less than $1,000 a year per person, so very low. Now compare and contrast with the United States. So last year, the United States, with a population of 340 million people, its GDP was $29 trillion. Its GDP per capita, 85,000 per person. And its emissions per capita is 14 tons of CO2. Now, remember, the United States military is the largest institutional consumer of fossil fuels on the planet, but their emissions are excluded from the US greenhouse gas inventories. So it's even higher if we were to include all of the US emissions. Now, Canada, by contrast, we've got a population, as you know, of 41 million people. Our GDP last year was $2 trillion, and our GDP per capita was 54,000 US dollars per person. And our emissions are very high, you know, at 14 tons per person per year. So, you know, much higher than China's. Now, another report that I want to bring to your attention is this from the US Energy Information Administration. And what the next two slides show is that what countries are the top producers and consumers of oil, because this is something that we also really need to consider. When you hear, oh, China emits so much carbon, you need to think about it per capita, but you also need to think about which countries are the biggest producers and consumers of oil and petroleum products. Well, you can see in this slide, this is according to the US agency, that the United States is producing 21 million barrels of petroleum products every single day. And look at Canada at 5 million barrels per day, and then you see China lower at in fifth place at 5 million barrels per day. So really, the United States remains a big culprit in the climate crisis. Now, this is consumption, and you can see that the United States, a country of 340 million people, are consuming 20 million barrels per day. China, 15 million. But if you look historically, it's gone up over the past 25 years. The United States has been consuming a very high level every single year. And then you can see Canada at 2 million barrels a day. Now, what has China and the United States been, using all of this oil for? Well, in the past 30 years, since the establishment of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, the United States has been engaged in endless war, and China on development. So the UN Secretary General, this is a quote that from a statement that he made at a meeting recently in Beijing, and he says, every time that I go to China, I am so inspired by the speed of change and progress. You have created one of the most dynamic economies in the world while helping more than 800 million people lift themselves out of poverty. It is the greatest anti-poverty achievement in history. And this, of course, alludes to what Dr. Zhang has just talked about. Another report that I want to bring to your attention, because some of the statistics in this are just astounding, and this is the latest global energy review. and it's produced by the International Energy Agency, which is based in Paris, France. And so most of the authors of this report are Europeans. And, and what they say is that this is one of the headlines from this report, is that it's China that is driving the incredible growth in renewable energy capacity. Uh, and the next 3 slides are from this report. So this is the electric car vehicle sales, and you can see that the growth for China is just so incredibly high compared to Europe and the United States. In the past 5 years, it's China that commands the EV market, and the use has just skyrocketed. It's incredible. The same thing for heat pump sales and use. You can see over the past 5 years how much it's increased compared to the United States. On solar photovoltaics and wind energy, it is just incredible, the growth. In fact, it's so disparate, it's so incredible, the rise of China's use of solar and wind, that they can't even be part of the statistics with the United States. China has got its own statistics, and you can see that on the right. They're using a different axis there, up to 500 gigawatts added per year, almost. It's just incredible. Whereas the United States, the added solar wind capacity is very, very low, and the same for Canada. So China's rise in renewable energy technologies is just dramatic. The other thing that is really incredible, and this is a social media graphic from the Chinese embassy in the United States, is the growth in public transit. So getting people out of cars and single vehicles and into public transit, that's very, very green. So this is their high-speed rail. What they've done in the past 15 years is just incredible. Just in the past 4 years alone, they have added an additional 10,000 kilometers of high-speed rail. So now they've got 48,000 kilometers of high-speed rail. And as you know, Canada and the United States, we don't even have 1 kilometer of high-speed rail. And China is also helping developing countries in Asia, in Africa, in South America with their public transit systems and with their train systems. And this is something that China should be helping us in Canada. Now I'd like to tell you a little bit about one of my experiences at the Climate Summit and how I've seen China in action. So this is me as part of a delegation with the Climate Action Network Canada, and I was representing the Canadian Voice of Women for Peace, VOW, and the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom Canada, WILP. And this was in November, December 2023. The climate summits are usually 2 weeks. This was in Dubai, the UAE. So you can see the really nice sunny weather in December. And at the climate summits, these are really, really big spaces. You've got an official negotiating space with all of the meeting rooms. And then in another part of the venue, you have all of these country pavilions. And at the country pavilions, they'll have displays, they have many presentations and meetings, and they're open to the public, where they're open to the delegates. So the delegates can go in and have a look at the different country pavilions and participate in the meetings and the presentations. So this is Canada's pavilion. You can see it's very basic inside. It's very basic. This, by contrast, is China's pavilion. China's pavilion was absolutely fantastic. China brought its panda diplomacy to Dubai, and it was the most vibrant space at the venue. So you can see these adorable big big pandas that they have outside the venue. And then all day long, they were offering, free tea to the delegates. And they were also doing things like calligraphy of your name, and they were passing out literature about all of the incredible things that they were doing. So this is one of the reports on the circular economy, and that's something that Dr. Zhang was just talking about. And they were also giving out these amazing panda bags, and I was so happy I got one because they were so cute. They had this little panda hat and panda buttons and stickers and information about all of the incredible things that China is doing. And then, uh, for instance, some of the signage that they had was on the initiatives that they were promoting. So one really important initiative that China is promoting is they're strengthening their early warning systems. And this is not just for their country, but it's also to help with other Asian countries, to help them anticipate extreme weather events and then to help adapt. So this is really so critical, especially when you have these super typhoons and things coming. Inside the pavilion, they had all of these incredible displays of their renewable energy technologies. And they also had so many different presentations. This presentation was on the practice of green and low carbon development in the Jiangsu province. And you can see the cute little panda up on the wall there in the corner. I just thought these were so adorable. But what it really conveys is that they wanted to have a very engaged, informative, friendly, welcoming space and sharing information, making connections. And this is why all of the countries were coming to the China Pavilion. It was such a vibrant a space, so incredible. It was really inspiring. And they also played music and things like that. So it was a happy, friendly space for learning and for sharing and for cooperating. Now, compare and contrast to the United States' pavilion, and I went inside and I listened to presentations, but they have this highly securitized space where they have these cameras and they had security guards, protecting the door. But this is the posture of the United States at the climate summits. Now, at every climate summit, the climate activists under the Climate Action Network International, they have been doing this since COP1, since 1995, giving out fossil awards for the countries that are most obstructive at the climate meetings. And at the end of the 2-week summit, they'll give the Colossal Fossil Award for the country that is the worst, that is really stalling and blocking the negotiations and impeding progress. And the fossil of the fossil of the day award is really serious business, because thousands of climate activists, they come together to choose to put forward nominations for the countries they think are the worst countries. And then there's a full day there's a full day deliberation about what countries should get these dishonors. And then at the end of the day and at the end of the climate summit, there are these ceremonies, and there are media releases that go out all around the world, and they are also in the newspaper called the Eco newspaper that the climate activists release at every day at the climate summit. So these fossil award ceremonies are very high profile. They get a lot of media attention. And you can go back and you can look on the website and look at the archives to see which countries have received most of these dishonors. Well, the top countries are, of course, the United States and Canada. And in the last 2 climate summits, COP28 in Dubai and COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, it was the United States that got most of the Fossil of the Day awards, and they also received the Colossal Fossil Award for being the most obstructive. And this was under the climate envoy, or the climate ambassador, John Kerry, during the Biden administration. So they were really holding up the negotiations and dragging their heels, and they have been doing it for the past 3 decades. Now, there is some important evidence of cooperation between Canada and China. and I want to speak to this very briefly, and that is in December of 2022, where Canada and China co-hosted the biodiversity conference. Now, this is the conference of the parties of the Biodiversity Convention. And again, this came into force 30 years ago, at the same time the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, but the United States has never ratified this biodiversity convention. Anyhow, in December 2022 in Montreal, Canada and China co-hosted the conference, and out of this conference, you know, it was attended by all of the countries that are parties to this convention. There was thousands and thousands of activists that attended, was the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And there was a number of agreements that were negotiated, but two that I want to highlight. One is the link between biodiversity and action on climate change. So they recognize that it's critical to protect our forests and our water in order to help reduce our emissions for climate change. And also, we need to use our lands and our waters sustainably. So that's where the two arrows are showing. Now, however, 2 weeks before Canada co-hosted with China the biodiversity conference, Canada released its Indo-Pacific strategy. Now, this happened 9 months after the US released its Indo-Pacific strategy and 5 months after NATO released its new strategic concept in Madrid, where it identified China as kind of a threat to the alliance. So Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy must be understood in that context and connecting with the US strategy and with the NATO strategic concept, because Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy mentions China 50 times, and really its aim and purpose is to like weaken and isolate China, and it really prepares for a conflict with China. So Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy says that that China is coercive and an increasingly disruptive power. Last week, Canada's Defense Minister David McGuinty spoke at the NATO Climate Security Forum in Montreal, and he said, you know, at this time, China is displaying increasingly aggressive behavior towards its neighbors as well as toward other countries in the Indo-Pacific, including Canada. But friends, you know, since Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy and the NATO strategic concept, it's Canada, the US, and NATO allies that have been militarizing the Indo-Pacific and very much provoking China. So this is a slide from Canada's Department of National Defense that shows greater military activities in the region. So the Canadian warships are sailing in the South China Sea alongside US and British aircraft carriers. Canada's warships are participating in more of these really aggressive naval exercises that are very environmentally destructive, like Talisman Sabre and RIMPAC, etc. But just after Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy came out in November of 2022, WILP Canada, we mobilized because we knew that the biodiversity convention was coming up. So we made the links and we put out a number of social media graphics, including this one that says, Canada's aggressive Indo-Pacific strategy undermines cooperation on biodiversity with China. No Canadian warships in the South China Sea. Stop the militarization of the Pacific Ocean. And these social media graphics we actually brought to the attention of China's ambassador to Canada. And last October, we had a Zoom meeting between WILP members and VOW members and the ambassador Wang Di and his staff. And we told him that as feminist peace organization, we very much want to build a peaceful relationship so that we can achieve the biodiversity and climate targets alongside of China. And we know that international cooperation is critical and that militarism undermines it, and that we don't support Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy. We want partnership with China. We had a very good meeting. He gave an incredible speech, and he's let us share that speech. So send me an email and I can send it to you. But he brought to our attention the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence that China has. And if you aren't aware of them, please read them. I also want to bring to your attention in closing that China has also released a very important global governance initiative. And again, articulating the values and principles of how China wants to be relating to other countries, including Canada. And these are plans that we can work with. And we have also brought these to the attention of the federal government. And then finally, I want to mention that this year is not only the 10th anniversary of the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement, it is also the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Platform for Action. In 1995, China hosted the 4th Women's Forum, and it came out with this really important agenda. And Canadian women groups, we are continuing to call for its implementation, and it demands that countries reduce military expenditures and cooperate with all countries on sustainability and environmental protection. And then finally, as Dr. Zhang said, President Xi has just announced China's new nationally determined contributions. You can check it out. If we want to have a climate safe and sustainable future, we must cooperate with China. China is not our enemy. And WILP and VOW, as women's organizations, we are really working hard to make that happen. So thank you very much, and I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you so much, Tamara. That was wonderful. So we do have a few questions here, and so we can start discussion right now. I first want to ask Dr. Zhang, what government policies are in effect that end up affecting consumer actions on the ground in China that have made consumers gravitate towards, let's say, electric vehicles or taking transit?
Okay, I will answer these questions. You mean that what actions has Chinese government taken to encourage the consumers to have made a different choice toward the EV or any other new energy product? Yes. Now in China now it's a very interesting situation. You can see that the younger generation is very different from the older generation. They like Chinese national brand very much. For example, in terms of car, the older generation, they like Honda, Toyota, the Japanese brand, and then many German brand, the Benz, the Volkswagen, such like that. But the younger generation in China, they like to buy BYD, like to buy any other very famous brand in EV. There are 2 reasons. One, Chinese government provide lots of subsidies or flexible policies toward the consumers. For example, in Beijing or in Shanghai, if you buy the oil car, you need to stand on the list to wait. So it's not easy for a consumer to buy a traditional car. But if you buy a green car, so-called, it's a new energy car, so it's easy or convenient to buy. You can quickly to buy it. And the price is also very affordable. The price is very affordable. And the younger generation is proud of the national brand. So they need to buy that. So I think one, because of the policy the Chinese government provide with this consumer. The other is the Chinese national proud, especially the younger generation. They prefer the national brand compared with the foreign brand. So this too makes the things happen. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Tamara, first of all, could I just ask that you put your email in the chat so that if people want to get at you for your presentation or for the speech you referenced, they can email you. And then second, I was going to ask you, how can Canadians engage with their local government or local officials, elected officials, to mitigate the ongoing tensions that are being created from the government of Canada towards China?
So the two women's organizations that I'm involved in, the Canadian Voice of Women for Peace, BOW, and the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom Canada, WILP, we have been reaching out and have had a number of meetings with members of parliament, with senators, and with different ambassadors. So we've had meetings, for instance, with the Embassy of Mexico. We've written letters to the Embassy of Hungary, for instance. We've had meetings with Canada's UN Ambassador, Bob Ray. And we are always saying things like, we need to cooperate with China. We need to end the wars, for instance, in Ukraine and the genocide in Gaza. We need to work collaboratively with all countries because the climate crisis is so dire and the poverty crisis is getting worse. I have also done things like making delegations. So I have, for instance, last year, when there were public consultation on Ontario's budget, and Ontario's finance minister was going across the province and asking for input, we put in a written submission, and then I went and I also gave an oral submission. One of the things that I recommended was, why doesn't Ontario partner with China on bringing high-speed rail to Ontario to link up Windsor through to Toronto, Ottawa, and then on to Montreal and Quebec City? And very seriously, and I think this, and I also brought this to the attention of China's ambassador to Canada. It was kind of funny because when we were having this meeting with Ambassador Wang Di, and I said to him, we're hoping China can help us have high-speed rail in Canada. He kind of laughed, and then I could see him bend down, like look down and start taking notes, like note to self. Women's groups are saying, help us with high-speed rail. So I think whatever we can do to make it possible to our elected officials and also to our institutions that China can actually be a country that we partner with is really important. And then finally, I also want to bring to your attention that the two women's organizations that I'm with are also part of a broader women's network called the Women, Peace and Security Network. And we are coming out with a publication in just a couple of weeks on the 25th anniversary of UN Security Council 1325 on women, peace, and security. And I have two articles in that, one on cutting military spending, but the other one is on critiquing Canada's Indo-Pacific strategy and ending with, we need to cancel Canada's current Indo-Pacific strategy and have a new partnership with China. And let's also think about the fact that our foreign minister, Anita Anand, is in China right now. She's going to be meeting with her counterparts, and we just need to make it possible to people in all different ways, our elected officials, in our institutions and organizations, that China is a country that has done incredible, inspiring things, lifting people out of poverty, leading on renewable energy technology. It is a trusted country that we can cooperate and partner with, and we must.
All right, thank you, Tamara. Dr. Zhang, we have a question from the chat from Miguel Figueroa. He notes that he's a great admirer of China's historic environmental achievements, such as the solar and wind farms, mass urban and intercity transit, EVs, and the efforts to reverse desertification in the Gobi Desert. But he also notes that here in the West, there are a lot of cynics who criticize China because it's still importing coal and building new coal power plants. How do you respond to these criticisms?
Okay, thank you very much for Miguel's question. I think it's a common question you can ask, and because China has achieved a lot of progress, but still you can see this criticism, these different opinions. I think it's very natural. It's very natural. Concerning your specific questions, why China now still build a new coal power plant? I think it's natural. China never promised that we will close off all the traditional power plant. What we said is that we promise to develop more new energy plant, new energy, solar energy, water energy, photovoltaic, such as that. But we never promised that we close up all the traditional power plant. The problem is that whether China can or not continue to import coal or build the new coal power plant. The problem is that the proportionality and the amount. If you see the amount and the proportionality of different energy, you can see the new energy is rising up and the traditional energy is decreasing. I should remind you to take notice of the newest message sent by President Xi to the UN Climate Summit. It promised that China will increase the share of non-fossil fuels in energy consumption over 30%. China never said we will not use traditional energy. We only say we will increase continuously to use more and more new energy. And it's a very important promise that it's the first time in history for China. It's a shift from controlling incremental increase to decreasing the existing levels of greenhouse gas emission. So it's unprecedented. Not only we decrease the incremental increase, this is the first time we promise to decrease the existing gas emission. Because I teach international relations class in Chinese university, I met many foreign students. I always told them China is it's hard for China to do something. If you do good things because of the discourse hegemony by the Western media, so sometimes they just demonize you. China do the wrong things, they criticize, but China do the right things, they even criticize. So it's very hard to project an accurate image of China in the world. That's a big problem. So for my personal hope, I think that there is no core interest conflict between China and Canada. All those participants in this meeting, at least you have interest or you are very friendly with China. So I think China and Canada can cooperate closely, especially under the background of Trump administration raised the idea of MAGA and America First. So it's a totally different geopolitical situation landscape in the world now. It's a great transformation. But China and Canada can still cooperate with each other to deal with the common challenge of the humankind. That's my personal hope. And to answer your question briefly, thank you.
Thank you. And then finally, to Tamara, using your experience in the environmental movement, Um, what is being done, or what are the challenges to protect different environments in Canada?
So yes, you know, uh, many of you on the call, know me as a peace activist, but I really came to my peace work as an environmentalist. So I've been an environmentalist longer than I've been a peace activist, uh, and when I was doing my environmental work in the mid and late 1990s, and early 2000s, I realized that the worst polluter in the country is the Canadian military. Most of the toxic sites are military sites. Most of the federal government emissions are from the military. The highest budget is the military, but at the time, the military was, bombing Yugoslavia and engaged in a combat mission in Afghanistan and Iraq and Libya, on and on and on. And the greatest producer of hazardous waste. So I thought, we're never going to achieve our environmental and climate targets if we continue with this really environmentally destructive militarism and war making. Um, and but what I have seen, though, in the environmental movement is really in the past 20 years, federal governments have underfunded environmental programs in this country and have overfunded the military. And the situation is going to get much worse. And I'm very worried. And that is because Canada is a member of NATO, and NATO is driving up our military spending. So currently, we are spending $41 billion annually for the military. But for the Department of Environment and Climate Change, we are only spending $2.8 billion. And it has basically been about $2 billion for the last 2 decades. And there are very few new announcements that have come out on environmental initiatives. Supposedly we have a prime minister, Mark Carney, who understands the environmental sustainability and climate challenges, but the announcements that he just made are really not going to be helping the environment and the climate. In fact, they are going to make things much worse. So I am very concerned that Canada really has not had a government that is committed to the environment and a just transition and renewable energy and cooperating with other countries. Instead, it's trying to protect its global dominance with the United States, and it's causing a lot of poverty and environmental destruction. So what we need to do, friends, is we need to stop this war making and this militarism. We are expecting a federal budget to come out on November 4th, and we need to put pressure on our government to cut military spending and invest it in climate action and poverty, and look to China as the example.
For me, I think that it's totally different between China. It's very different between China and Canada. Compared with Canada, China is densely populated to many peoples, and China is a less developed countries compared with Canada. So first, the foremost important is that strike a balance between economic development is still the number one target of China, and on one hand, and sustainable development, even the environmental protection on the other hand. So how to strike a balance between these two difficult target is the very important issue Chinese government need to think. The second, I think, I just mentioned, there is a triangle relations between the government, enterprise, and the people. So how to make these three parties really cooperate with each other? From my personal observation, I think the weakness of nowadays, I have stated a lot of the progress made, but for the weakness or shortcomings, or what we can improve is that you should encourage more and more maybe non-governmental organization of environmental protection to participate in this campaign more and more, and to build a more climate adaptive society. So these three parties should cooperate closely with each other to find a good approach and ways to deal with the common issues. This is the second point. The third, that I think China can also learn from Canada to learn. Not only Canada can learn from China, but China can also learn from Canada how to deal with, how to use the high tech to deal with some air pollution issue. So this is a mutual beneficial approach to each country. So it's a common challenge, not only to China, to Canada, but to the humankind to deal with the environmental protection issue, especially under the background I just said, United States Trump administration and the EU turn back from its previous standpoints in environmental protection in new energy industry. So China and Canada can cooperate more and do more to deal with the common issues of mankind. Thank you.
Edward, can I just add one other thing? I know that we're at time at 9:30, but I want to make a suggestion for a future forum, and that is, if you haven't already done something about Canada, China, and the Arctic, because that's one area where we really need to start building cooperation on, because the Arctic is a fragile oceanic ecosystem that's the fastest warming on the planet. We should not be militarizing it with NATO and NORAD like Canada is doing. We need to protect it through the Arctic Council in partnership with Russia and with China and all of the other Arctic states. And that, I think, would be a great topic for a future forum. So yeah, so it was so great to learn from Dr. Zhang and to hear the great questions and comments. And I'm really grateful to have been with you all tonight.
Yeah, I fully agree. Yeah.
Yes, I really want to thank you both again for joining us, Dr. Zhang and Tamara Lorincz. I want to also thank some partners that helped arrange this and support us through this, the Canadian Peace Congress, the Edmonton Peace Council, the Canada-China Friendship Promotion Association, the Young Communist League of Canada and Alberta particularly, and the news site, the Canada Files. Really do thank you for your support. And I want to thank everyone for joining us. That takes us to the end of our forum. Once again, thank you to our speakers. And thank you, Tamara, for suggesting that topic. That will be a future topic that we will incorporate. Thank you so much to everyone. Have a wonderful evening and good night.
Thank you, everyone. Peace.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Take good care.